My mom said I was just jealous of my successful sister, so I canceled their mortgage payments. What happened next pulled the curtain back on everything they had tried to keep hidden for years. That sentence probably makes me sound like the bad guy, but if you stick with me, I promise you'll understand why I did what I did. It wasn't spite. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was truth. I am 27 years old. My name is Mason Carter. For most of my life, I've been treated like the backup plan in my own family, the afterthought, the one who never quite measured up. Not because I failed at anything, but because I took a path my parents never understood. I didn't go to college. I didn't sit behind a desk. I didn't wear a suit. I fix things. That's what I do. Air conditioners, furnaces, walk-in coolers, commercial freezers. People call me when their comfort or business is on the line and I show up. I own a small HVAC business in Houston, Texas. I have 4 guys working for me, a reliable client base, and steady income. But in my parents' eyes, I was always just the one who didn't make it. Not like my sister Alyssa, who lived in Los Angeles and posted pictures from hotel rooftops, airport lounges, and luxury condos with views of the ocean. According to Mom, Alyssa was the image of success. And according to Mom, my discomfort around her wasn't because something felt off. It was jealousy. Plain and simple. She had no idea that for 2 years, while they praised Alyssa's every move, I was the one secretly paying the mortgage on their house. Month after month. $43,000 in total, just so they wouldn't lose the only home we ever had. But then one day, Mom told me I should start paying rent. I smiled, nodded, and quietly stopped the mortgage payments. That was the day everything began to unravel. My name is Mason Carter, and I run an HVAC business in Houston. I didn't grow up wanting to fix air conditioners or crawl through attics in the Texas heat, but somewhere along the line, it became who I am. I dropped out of college in my second year, not because I couldn't handle it, but because I realized I was wasting time and money chasing a degree I didn't care about just to earn approval from people who would never really understand me anyway. I started working with a local contractor, an old-school guy named Leon, who believed in hard work and showing up on time. He didn't care where I went to school or how I dressed. He cared if I could find a leak in a refrigerant line, if I could explain a repair to a customer clearly, and if I stood by my word. Under Leon, I learned fast. Within 2 years, I was taking side jobs, building connections, buying tools, and saving every penny. I bought a used service van in cash and started my own small operation. At first, I thought my parents would be proud. I imagined my mom telling her friends that her son was a business owner. I thought my dad would ask about the equipment I was using or how I was managing clients. But that never happened. Instead, my dad forwarded me job listings at call centers and utility companies telling me I needed stability. My mom kept suggesting community college programs just in case the fixing thing didn't work out. It didn't matter that I was earning 6 figures by the time I was 25, or that I was fully booked weeks in advance with some of the highest-end residential clients in the city. To them, success meant suits and titles, not work, boots, and toolboxes. Alyssa, my older sister, was the shining star. She graduated from UCLA, got into luxury real estate, and moved to Los Angeles. Her life looked like a highlight reel: brunches at rooftop cafes, client meetings at beach resorts weekend, getaways to wine country. Her Instagram was a non-stop flow of champagne glasses and motivational quotes. My parents ate it up. Every holiday dinner was the Alyssa update show. They hung on every word she said. When she wasn't there in person, they'd read aloud her texts like sacred scripture. Alyssa says her firm might promote her to regional lead. Alyssa just closed a deal with an international buyer. Alyssa and her boyfriend Tom are looking at townhouses in Malibu. Meanwhile, I was always the utility player. Mason's still working with AC stuff, right? Or, hey Mason, you ever think about doing something more steady? There was no malice in their tone, but that made it worse. They weren't even trying to hurt me. They just genuinely didn't see me as someone worth bragging about. The deeper irony was that I was the one living in the real world. I was paying taxes, employing people, managing logistics, keeping a business afloat without a single cent of family help. Alyssa, on the other hand, was living in a city where image was everything and reality could be edited with a filter. But that didn't matter to Mom. She saw a glossy story and chose to believe it. She saw me covered in sweat after a 12-hour service run and saw failure. That quiet dismissal, the way she smiled politely when I talked about a big contract or changed the subject when I mentioned expanding the business, those little gestures built up over time. They stacked on top of each other until I stopped trying to share anything at all. I still took them out to dinner once in a while. I still covered bills when they came up short. I still sent birthday gifts and fixed their heater without charging a dime. But in their eyes, I was the guy who never lived up to his potential. The guy who should have been more like Alyssa. And all the while, I just kept showing up, fixing what was broken, including them. The thing about being dismissed quietly is that it doesn't sting all at once. It builds up in layers like dust settling in corners you never notice until one day the sunlight hits just right and you see how much has gathered. That's how it felt living under the same roof with my parents after Alyssa moved out. I stayed in the old family home longer than I planned. At first, it made sense. I was saving money while launching the business, and after Dad hurt his back and had to retire early, I figured it wouldn't hurt to stay and help out. The house wasn't in great shape either. The AC unit was ancient, the plumbing was temperamental, and every time it rained hard, the basement threatened to flood. I took care of all of it. I replaced ductwork, resealed the roof, fixed water damage, rewired half the electrical. I did it without being asked, without keeping score. I figured that's what family does. But they never saw it as real work. Just Mason tinkering again. Just Mason avoiding adulthood. Then 2 years ago, I accidentally overheard a conversation that changed everything. It was late at night. I was coming back from a job and walked past the living room. My parents didn't hear me enter. They were sitting together whispering with a stack of papers in front of them. I froze when I heard the words, mortgage and foreclosure. They were 3 months behind. Dad's pension wasn't stretching far enough, and Mom's side hustle making quilts wasn't bringing in more than a few hundred a month. They were scared. They didn't know what to do. They talked about selling, about downsizing, about borrowing money from relatives. I stood there in the hallway, heart racing. I knew they would never take help from me. They'd rather lose the house than admit I was in a position to save it. So I made a decision. The next day, I called the mortgage company. I asked about the account. I got their permission to speak on their behalf using my power of attorney papers I still had from when Dad had surgery a year prior. I rerouted the monthly payments through a business expense account I set up just for this. It was all legal discreet and, most importantly, untraceable. To them, it would look like the payments were being covered by an automated transfer from their retirement fund. Every month, I sent $1, $800 to the bank. I watched the balance stabilize. I watched the foreclosure threats stop. I watched my parents relax again. They never questioned it. Never asked why the letters from the bank stopped coming. Never even thanked whoever they thought was helping them. I didn't need the credit. At least that's what I told myself. For the next 24 months, I paid every bill. I turned down vacations. I worked weekends. I skipped luxuries. I even sold a second work van I had planned to use for expanding my team, all to make sure they didn't lose the roof over their heads. And through it all, I kept being the disappointment. Every time Mom scrolled through Alyssa's Instagram and sighed dreamily, I swallowed the bitterness. Every time Dad made a comment about how maybe I'd still find my direction, I nodded and kept my mouth shut. It wasn't just that they didn't know what I was doing for them. It was that they couldn't even imagine it. The idea that I could be capable of something that responsible, that generous, that strategic was so far outside the story they believed about me that it simply never crossed their minds. They assumed they were getting lucky, or that their financial advisor had done something clever. Or maybe they didn't think about it at all, and maybe that was the part that hurt the most. Not the lack of credit, but the absence of curiosity. The unwillingness to look deeper and ask, could Mason be more than we think? Could Mason be the one holding us together? But I kept paying, because despite everything, it was still home. My home. Our home. I had scraped my knees on those stairs, learned to ride a bike in that driveway, spent Christmases in that living room. I couldn't bear the thought of it getting taken away. So I paid, and I stayed quiet. For a while, I didn't question anything about Alyssa's life. She was out there in Los Angeles doing her thing, closing big real estate deals, flying around the country with her boyfriend Tom, posting perfectly lit photos of cheese boards and skyline views. She called every couple of weeks to update Mom and Dad with vague but exciting news. New clients, new listings, possible promotion. Things are taking off, she'd say, her voice always upbeat, always composed. At first, I tried not to care. I figured if it made my parents happy to believe in her curated life, let them. But then little things started to feel off. It began with her social media. Alyssa was always meticulous about tagging locations. It was part of her brand. Restaurants, offices, airports. But suddenly, she stopped. She posted pictures with captions like productive morning or client lunch, but no context. No places. No people. Just cropped images and vague vibes. Then I saw a picture she posted of her office view. It showed the Los Angeles skyline, but something about it bothered me. I had seen that photo before. I dug into my browser history and realized it was from a luxury apartment listing I had viewed online a few weeks earlier while helping a client plan their HVAC upgrade. The exact same photo, same angle, same lighting. It was a stock image. That's when my stomach sank. The next time she visited home, I paid closer attention. She used to arrive in a sleek white Audi. This time, she borrowed Mom's car. When I asked about her car, she said it was in the shop. For the third month. She forgot her wallet twice when we went out for lunch. She wore clothes that I recognized from Mom's closet, not her usual designer stuff. And she kept dodging questions. When Dad asked about her job, she said everything was going great and changed the subject. When Mom brought up Tom, Alyssa just smiled and said we're navigating some stuff. Her whole energy had shifted. Still polished, still upbeat, but thinner. Like someone holding up a cardboard cutout of their old self. I started doing some digging. Nothing creepy, just surface-level stuff. I looked up the company she claimed to work for. No trace of her name on their website. Checked their LinkedIn page. Nothing. Looked up Tom's finance firm. Same story. No mention of him anywhere official. It didn't add up. And then I remembered something. A few months earlier, I had overheard Alyssa and Tom outside during one of their visits. Their voices were low, urgent. Tom said something like, "You can't keep stalling," and Alyssa replied, "I just need a little more time." When they saw me, they froze and smiled like everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I realized Alyssa had built her image on smoke and mirrors. The brunches, the office views, the job updates, all carefully curated illusions. I didn't know how deep it went, but I knew it was fragile. And my parents, they saw none of it. They still believed she was on the verge of becoming VP. They still quoted her career advice at dinner. They still treated me like the kid who never figured it out while their daughter, the mogul, built an empire of shadows. I tried bringing it up gently. I mentioned how weird it was that her office picture looked familiar. Mom brushed me off. I asked if they ever worried Alyssa might be stressed. Mom snapped, "Not everyone wants to fix broken AC units for a living." Dad said I needed to stop being so negative and learn to appreciate success when I see it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded, smiled, and kept watching, waiting, because something was going to break. I could feel it. You can only stretch an illusion so far before it snaps. Things really started to spiral about 6 months after I began noticing the cracks in Alyssa's story. I had just come home from a 14-hour day installing a rooftop system for a medical clinic when Mom approached me in the kitchen, arms folded, lips pressed into that thin line she uses when she's building up to something unpleasant. She opened with small talk about how groceries were getting expensive, how utilities had gone up, how everyone was feeling the pinch. I listened, nodded, wiped sweat from my neck. Then she dropped it. She said it was time I started contributing to household expenses. Rent, she called it. I almost laughed, not because I thought I was above it, but because I had been quietly paying their entire mortgage for 2 years. And now, without knowing, she was asking me to pay rent on top of that. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her. I wondered what she'd do if I told her the truth right then and there. But I didn't. I just said I'd think about it. She seemed annoyed that I didn't instantly agree. The next week, weird things started happening. My business email went down for 2 days because someone accidentally cleared out all the cookies and saved passwords from the family computer. Mom said she was just doing some cleaning because the laptop was running slow. Then the internet got disconnected. I called the provider only to find out that the account had been closed. When I confronted Mom, she said it was to cut unnecessary expenses. Meanwhile, I was trying to send invoices and schedule installations through my phone hotspot. Then came the intervention. That's what I call it now. Mom invited over Uncle Larry, Dad's older brother, a retired middle manager who always spoke like he was addressing a boardroom. They sat me down in the living room, coffee cups in hand, and started lecturing me about responsibility, long-term planning, and growing up. I sat through 30 minutes of it before excusing myself to go give an estimate on a 6-figure HVAC system for a chain of restaurants. The irony would have been hilarious if it weren't so infuriating. Through all of this, Dad stayed quiet. Sometimes he nodded along. Sometimes he looked uncomfortable. Once he came out to my workshop in the garage and told me Mom was just worried and wants the best for you. I wanted to ask if sabotaging my business counted as wanting the best. Instead, I changed the subject, but the passive aggression kept escalating. Sticky notes about utilities due started appearing on my bedroom door. My truck keys went missing one morning before a job. I found them 2 hours later inside the washing machine. Coincidence? Maybe. But I didn't think so. Then it got personal. One of my clients sent a handwritten thank you card and included a cash tip. I left it on the kitchen counter for 5 minutes. When I came back, the envelope was gone. Mom admitted she took the money to cover groceries. That was the moment something shifted in me. Not just frustration or hurt, but a cold clarity. They weren't just dismissing me anymore. They were undermining me, actively, deliberately. And the saddest part, they still thought of me as the one who needed help, the one who hadn't figured it out, the one who should be more like Alyssa. All while I was paying their bills, holding their roof together, and watching them treat me like a burden. By the time the groceries incident happened, something in me had already begun to calcify. I had spent 2 years holding everything together while being treated like dead weight, and for what? There was no recognition, no understanding, no hint that they had the slightest clue what I was actually doing for them. All while Alyssa the Golden Child was weaving together a fiction so convincing even she might have started believing it. I couldn't keep doing it. I had reached my threshold. So I stopped. I logged into the mortgage account and canceled the auto payment. It was like pulling a pin from a grenade. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a warning. I just let the next due date arrive and pass. A week later, the first letter came in the mail from the bank. Then, a second. I watched Mom collect the envelopes and shove them in a drawer, like ignoring them might make them disappear. Eventually, she opened one. I could hear the sound of her voice from the other room rising in panic. I stayed quiet. She and Dad talked in hushed tones for days, calling the bank, trying to understand what was happening. They still believed their retirement fund was covering it, but that account had long since run dry. Mom blamed some banking error. Dad suggested calling their financial advisor. Neither of them ever suspected me. And then came the breaking point. I was out in the driveway fixing the AC unit on my work truck when Mom came storming out, letter in hand. Her voice was shrill, panicked, accusing. She demanded to know why the mortgage hadn't been paid, why after all this time things were suddenly falling apart. I looked at her. Really looked. Her face was flushed, her eyes wide with desperation. And for a second I almost caved, almost told her the truth. But then she said it. She said Alyssa's going to help us. She always comes through, not like you always thinking about yourself. I stared at her for a long time before I said anything. And when I finally spoke, my voice was calm. Too calm. I told her, ask Alyssa then. Let's see what happens. I went back to my work, hands trembling slightly but determined. The days that followed were a slow-motion disaster. Alyssa didn't answer their calls. She didn't respond to their messages. A week passed, then another. Mom started unraveling. Dad grew more silent. They were cornered, and I let them sit in it. For once, I wanted them to feel the uncertainty I had carried alone for years. I wanted them to ask real questions, to look around and wonder who had really been holding them up. They didn't. Instead, they fell deeper into denial. Mom started calling distant cousins asking for help. Dad quietly listed some tools on Facebook Marketplace. I found the ad and deleted it. I didn't want him selling his things to stay afloat when the answer was staring them in the face. And still, I said nothing. I kept going to work, kept fixing people's heating and cooling systems, kept pretending everything was fine while their illusion crumbled behind closed doors. And every day I got a little stronger, because for the first time I wasn't carrying their weight. I wasn't protecting them from the truth. I was letting it arrive. And it did. After the conversation that night, everything shifted, but not in the way I hoped. My parents were stunned, yes, and for a few days they walked around the house like ghosts, moving slowly, speaking in half sentences, trying to understand how the narrative they had clung to for so long had unraveled so quickly. But they never really acknowledged the depth of what I had done. My mom said she was proud of me, that she always knew I had it in me, but it sounded like someone trying to rewrite history rather than own up to it. My dad said he respected what I did, but followed it up by saying we should all focus on helping Alyssa now as a family, as if everything I had carried didn't merit even a real apology. They spoke about Alyssa like she was a wounded bird who had flown into a storm, not someone who had lied for years while draining resources and goodwill. That's when I knew I had to leave. Not out of spite, not because I was angry, though I was, but because staying would mean staying stuck in the role they had assigned me. The role of the reliable son who never needed anything, who quietly patched the leaks, who absorbed the damage and kept smiling. I couldn't do it anymore. I found an apartment across town, a small place with a detached garage that I could convert into a work area. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I signed the lease without telling them. The following weekend, while they were at the bank trying to negotiate a forbearance plan, I packed my things and moved out. I left behind a folder on the kitchen table with printouts of every mortgage payment. I had made a summary of the total amount and a short note. It said, "I will cover the mortgage for 1 more month. After that, you're on your own." I also wrote, "Now you know which of your children was actually successful. Don't contact me until you're ready to apologize for how you've treated me." That was it. No drama, no yelling, no final confrontation. Just facts. Just the truth documented in black and white. That night, I sat in my new apartment surrounded by boxes and silence. I felt lighter. Not joyful, not triumphant, just free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying the burden of their perception. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't trying to earn their respect. I had finally stepped out of their shadow and into my own life. In the weeks that followed, the calls came. Dozens of them. My mom left long voicemails, her voice trembling with guilt or maybe just panic. She said they didn't mean to hurt me, that they were just trying to push me to be my best self, that they'd always loved me. My dad texted once. He said he was sorry if I felt unappreciated, which of course is the kind of apology that blames the listener, not the speaker. Alyssa eventually resurfaced. I heard through a cousin that she'd told everyone she had suffered a nervous breakdown from work-related stress and was taking time to find herself. She had reframed her failure into a spiritual journey, a redemption arc. And of course, my parents bought it completely. They started telling people that she had simply burned out from her high-pressure job and was now focused on wellness. Meanwhile, not a single word was said about what I had done for them. Not once did they acknowledge even privately the sacrifices I made to keep them afloat. But it didn't matter anymore. I had detached. I wasn't waiting for their recognition. I wasn't hoping for a thank you. I had built something solid, something that didn't require filters or followers or family validation. My HVAC business was thriving. I hired another full-time employee and started turning down jobs because demand was too high. Clients respected me. My team relied on me. I had a name in the local industry, and best of all, I had peace. The kind of peace that comes not from being seen, but from seeing yourself clearly. I used to think success was something other people decided for you, a degree, a job title, a round of applause. But it's not. Success is waking up without dread. It's building something real with your hands. It's living a life you don't have to lie about. It's not needing anyone else's permission to be proud of what you've done. I stopped trying to impress people who never looked beyond the surface. I stopped performing. I stopped explaining. I started living. And it's funny. In being labeled the family disappointment, I found freedom. They called me a failure, and I became the only one not faking it. Turns out being underestimated is a powerful thing. It gives you room to grow without being watched, to build without noise, to become something unshakable. I don't know if my parents will ever truly understand who I am or what I did for them. I don't know if Alyssa will ever stop spinning stories long enough to face the truth. But I know who I am. I know what I've built. And I know that whatever comes next, I'll face it with my head held high because I stopped trying to earn love that had to be earned in the first place. I gave. I endured. I walked away. And I am free.